Hello and welcome to this video that acts as a sort of extension to Oddtober 2021. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the enhanced edition of Oddworld Soulstorm, which is a big free update made to the base version of Oddworld Soulstorm. The enhanced edition also coincides with the release of the game on Xbox platforms too, so let's dive into it and see what it's all about. Now, for those of you that don't know, for the past 3 years I've been doing an Oddworld video marathon throughout the month of October, and over the years we've reviewed every single game in the series, and also tackled some other interesting Oddworld related topics too. Just as I finished my review of Oddworld Soulstorm on the 15th of October 2021, which by the way is currently the longest review I've ever done, Oddworld inhabitants of course went ahead and announced the enhanced edition of Soulstorm literally 3 days later, instantly dating my review and making me look like a bit of a schmuck. Well, now that the enhanced edition is actually out, I might as well take a look at it and see if it fixes any of the issues that I brought up in my original review of the game, as well as explain what the enhanced edition actually is. As I already mentioned, the Enhanced Edition is a free update for the base version of Soulstorm, so regardless of if you got it on PlayStation Plus when it first released, whether you waited for the physical version, or whether you're playing it for the first time on Xbox, it's free for everyone. The main thing that the Enhanced Edition adds to the game is some DLC levels in the form of Tobys Escape and Viker's Labs. Tobys Escape explains how Toby managed to escape Rupture Farms without the aid of Abe, while the Viker's Labs DLC puts Madokan test subjects through a gauntlet as part of an experiment. Both of these DLC packs sound great, but there's currently a massive caveat attached to them, which is that Tobys Escape is locked to the PlayStation consoles, whereas Viker's Labs is exclusive to the Xbox. That means that in order to play both of these DLC packs, you would need to go out and buy the game twice across 2 different consoles. Now, as for why Oddworld inhabitants would separate the content like this, there's only really one reason I can think of, and that is to make any huge fans of the series go out and buy 2 copies so that they can make more money off of you. It's a massively anti-customer move, and honestly, I would just wait until both of the DLC packs are put onto both consoles. It'll only be a matter of time until they do that, I'm sure. The other reason for doing this is that they might have lost a ton of money by putting Soulstorm up as a free game on PlayStation Plus upon its release. So this is the way of trying to recoup the losses by incentivizing double dipping. But quite frankly, if that is the case, then that's on them. They made that call to make Soulstorm free in the first place, so why are the fans being punished for that? You can probably tell, but I'm actually a little bit irritated by the way that Oddworld inhabitants have been making stupid business decisions like this recently. Like, the base version of Soulstorm was clearly released in an unfinished state, the physical versions released way after the digital ones, which is a trend I'm noticing more and more recently, and I hate it. It's like they treat the digital release as a beta version, and then the physical version only comes out when all of the bugs are fixed. And now we're in a situation where you can't even own a complete version of the game with all of the DLC because it's split across different consoles. As much as I love Oddworld inhabitants, I do have to admit that they're kind of tainting the legacy a bit with these blunders, and it's pretty sad to see. Anyway, because I'm not going to spend money on the Xbox version of the game when I already have it on PS5, that means that I actually can't play the Viker's Labs DLC. So instead, let's take a look at Tobys Escape. This is actually a really interesting concept for some DLC. We open with Alf and Toby after they've just hijacked a train in the main game, and they're talking about how Toby even knows how to drive the train in the first place. He explains that he worked in the boiler room in Rupture Farms, and he used to sneak out to watch the trains, and even found an instruction manual for them. Toby then reveals that Abe didn't actually ever save him, with Alf asking how he got out of there without Abe's help. We then flash back to just after Abe has caused a lightning bolt to set Rupture Farms on fire, and Toby is trapped in the boiler room as everything is bursting into flames and exploding around him. Now, before we start talking about the gameplay here, I do want to point out that although the concept behind Tobys Escape is incredible, I do think that when you actually experience it, it's a little bit lacking. The cutscene of Alf and Toby is an in-engine one, so it lacks the level of quality as seen in the proper Soulstorm cutscenes. And on top of that, it's just a little bit boring because it's just a back and forth shot of Alf and Toby talking. We should have had a flashback scene showing Toby in the boiler room and watching the trains and stuff. It could have been a lot more dynamic and interesting than what's actually presented. It's always been a rule with telling a story like this to show and don't tell. But unfortunately with this DLC, it's a lot more telling than actually showing. The actual gameplay is similarly a little bit lacking. It's basically 10 or so tiny platforming sections where you're given a star ranking based on how quickly you got through each level. Some of them are actually quite interesting and challenging, but there's nothing here that's all too mind-blowing. There's no game speak, no possession, no crafting, and the whole thing feels very much stripped back and simple. I do like how Toby can't double jump though, basically solidifying that Abe is the only Madokan who can do this. There's really only one of these levels which really impressed me, which is this one where you climb an elevator shaft as it's exploding. But what's so cool about this is that it's the very same elevator shaft that you actually use in Abe's Odyssey just before you escape to the stockyards. This is actually really cool, and it's a bit of a shame that we didn't see more returning areas from the first game too. In the final level we get to see some Scrabs and Paramites in the background, which is really nice considering that they don't make an appearance at all in the main game. And we actually get a bit of a revelation at the end of the DLC that not all of the Paramites and Scrabs died in the Rupture Farms explosion because Toby actually released a lot of them into the wild. The DLC ends with Toby following a trail of magical lights which lead him to the Mosaic Lines, which is where Soulstorm begins. I don't know what's going on with the effect on these lights though. It looks like there's some sort of texture issue with them and they look like pink bits of static. I can only assume that this is a mistake, but how the hell did they miss this? So yeah, overall Tobys Escape is fine. Obviously with it being free, you can't complain too much, and despite its presentation being really poor and there being several parts that feel unpolished, the story is actually quite interesting and it's cool seeing some parts of Rupture Farms that we've never seen before. It's extremely short though, and I managed to get 3 stars on every single level in less than an hour. So it's not like it's gonna entertain you for very long, and it's definitely not enough of a reason to revisit the game as a whole. Outside of Tobys Escape though, the enhanced edition of Soulstorm also promised improved gameplay mechanics and motion code for the main game. So what's all of that about? Well, I replayed a few levels of Soulstorm, and I've got to say, I'm really struggling to spot any differences between the Enhanced Edition and the version that I played in early October. There's now tips that display on the loading screens, the Sligs have access to a stun gun now, which I'm pretty sure they didn't have before, and there's more rocks placed in the levels to allow you to knock Sligs out easier. Other than extremely minor differences like that though, this is exactly the same game that I've already reviewed, and it seemingly doesn't fix any of the bigger issues I had with the game, like the in-engine cutscenes being poor, the music being quite boring, you not being able to backtrack a lot of the time, the controls sometimes being a bit slippery and latching onto things when you don't want it to, and you still can't reactivate checkpoints after hitting them a first time to save your progress. Plus, on top of all of this, Tobys Escape doesn't even have trophies, which is a minor thing, but it's still a little bit strange. My guess with what's going on here is that the Enhanced Edition is being aimed at people who haven't touched the game since it originally released back in April 2021. So the Enhanced part is talking not only about the updates made most recently, but every update since the game came out. Thinking about it like this means that the bulk of the Enhanced Edition updates were actually already in the game prior to the Enhanced Edition releasing. So yeah, if you take into consideration all of the the updates that have been made to the game since it released, then yeah, the Enhanced Edition is way better than the state that Soulstorm originally released in. But if you played it more recently like I did, then it's practically exactly the same game, and I feel like this is an attempt on Oddworld Inhabitants' part to get people to give it a second chance. Basically, to sum all of this up, I would say that the Enhanced Edition is more so the actually finished edition. I feel like I've been really negative throughout this video, and I don't know exactly why that is. I feel like maybe the DLC didn't live up to its full potential, and I also think it's stupid how they separated the DLC packs across two different consoles. I also feel like it's a little bit of a stretch calling this the Enhanced Edition when it's almost identical to the version of the game that I played back in October. At the same time though, this is a free update and it is the best version of the game that's ever been available, so don't let my weird negative attitude put you off of playing it. Especially if you're getting it on Xbox and it's the first time you've ever experienced it. I'll put a link in the description below to my actual review of the game, so that you can watch that if you want to get a better feel as to what my opinion of the actual game is. But for now, let me know if you plan on jumping back into Soulstorm to experience it again now that this big update is out, or if you're playing it for the first time ever, and let me know what you think of the DLC too. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe to see more stuff like this coming soon, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!